The belief in evolution has paved the way for the destruction of the unborn. You say, why is abortion so popular? Well, it goes all the way back into really you can make a case, of course, with the Greeks and the Romans, maybe even further back with that. But in particular, there was some gentleman by the name of Ernst Haeckel, and he came up with this, what's called the recapitulation theory. So what he believed, Ernst Haeckel, and a little bit of background about him, he was a professor at the University of Jena in the 1860s, 1870s, 1880s, and he was a committed evolutionist. Now, he was a contemporary of Charles Darwin. And when Charles Darwin modernized evolution, they became really distant buddies. But the problem was that Ernst Haeckel just really went a little bit overboard. Now, I'd say really not more than a little. He went way overboard in regards to his understanding of how we got here through evolution, through the lens of evolution. He said that when the mother was pregnant, whether it's an animal, whether it's a human being, that embryo goes through various stages. These are these evolutionary stages going just like it would have been from the beginning. Okay? So when lightning struck the murky waters and created the first cell, and then it replicated itself somehow, and eventually it becomes some type of an amphibian, and then it eventually gets to where we are now. Well, he said that's repeated in the mother's womb, whether it's an animal or whether it's a human being. Is that true? Well, since then, even shortly after he came up with the idea, his own professors put him on the hot seat and showed, and got him to admit that this was fraudulent, that these drawings were fraudulent. So why did he do it in the first place? Of course, one, because he was a committed evolutionist, and two, he wanted justification for abortion. That is, if God is not the one, as the Bible says, who knit you in your mother's womb, then it's the process of evolution that would come about, and that there is no God who's guiding or overseeing any of that. So whether it's a fish, pig, or human, all at the early stage, they are all the same. And again, this is what he said was a fraudulent one. Now I want you to look at this list here. Every death, that occurs from a man or woman fighting for their country, whether in Afghanistan or Iraq or whatever it may be, it's important because that's a person who has given their life for our freedom and our nation. So each of these crosses represent 5,000 deaths, and you can see many of those who lost their lives. Civil War, of course, we had a total of over 863,000 people that lost their lives. Probably 50% of that had to do with disease, by the way, that came through, such as smallpox. But when you compare that to what we have from abortion, in 1973 to the present, and then you could really go further than that, more like 54 million. What we see then is there's no comparison, is there? No comparison. We have really wiped out a generation, maybe two generations, with abortion. How tragic. And the blood that really is on our hands. The Bible says, I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works. Thine eye did see my substance, yet being imperfect. How precious also are thy thoughts unto me, O God. It's interesting what we see in Psalms 139, that God has been actively involved when you were in your mother's womb. And Jeremiah says, then the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. Isn't that amazing? That he knew us while we were in our mother's womb, and he had already decided what we would look like and the direction that we would take from there. The belief in evolution has paved the way for the destruction of the unfit. So we've talked about really abortion, but we've got to get to another level here, because it's not going to stop as far as if man is in control versus God being in control. Both Hitler and Stalin used Darwinism to justify the slaughter of the unfit of society. And if there is no God, then man can rightfully decide who should live or who should die. In America today, the quality of life is being used to justify the ending of a life. We put Charles Darwin in the foreground because the ideas of Lenin and Stalin and Marx and Hitler come directly from this man by the name of Charles Darwin. I don't know if Charles Darwin ever realized what he was unleashing when he developed his modernized understanding of the theory of evolution. But he set into motion what would be the death of millions of people. Because Vladimir Lenin took his ideas and brought them to Russia. And then we know what happened in Russia. For 70 years, they had this hardcore communism, which many people lost their lives. Adolf Hitler, who picked up these ideas, tragically, from even American textbooks back from the 19-teens and 20s on how to do away with people that were not part of the Aryan race.